So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've all had a good day so far. Hey. I certainly have. I think the way everything's linked together has been awesome, and I think the next series of 4 lightning talks will hopefully complement everything that's gone beforehand too. So, my charts. My lightning talk is principally around being a bystander on equality, and there was a moment over a decade ago now when I realized I was doing nothing to help, principally. That was the general tone when I was sat in this very room, and that was my main message as I left the room. And there were some in the room who I happened to be their manager at the time, who were part of a follow-on discussion about this. So it's kind of interesting that those individuals are also, or some of them are here as well. And as with everything, I'm going to try and link this to story. And tell a journey. And Karen showed a wonderful picture this morning of a beautiful baby. And you're going to see a picture of me now as a baby. It's not as Instagrammable. It really isn't.
It's not. I've seen it.
So in the beginning, thanks, Marion. So yeah, in the beginning there is emergence. There's birth. And it's kind of I know it's a bit dark on the screen, but that actually is kind of what I look like now when I wake up as well. To be fair, you know, you get born and you're entered into this world, and you grow up through the years, and you have homemade birthday cakes, Humpty Dumpty, yeah, and a Munch Bunch t-shirt, which is kind of interesting in that regard. And then you move on, and you wear silly outfits that your parents put you into. And my brother was wearing a Captain America t-shirt before Captain America was even cool. I was dressed as a Royal Mail person or Postman Pat. I have absolutely no idea. And then things happen from around about 6 through to 16, 18, whatever the deadline is to be, when you have your boy band cover shoot. And through that time, these things happen. We all learn, we're nurtured, we explore the world, we make friendships. Hopefully we make loads of mistakes along the way. And we hopefully are curious about the world. And it's all done in a very innocent, open way. So life for me at home was very much, we didn't talk about diversity. We didn't talk about our differences. That wasn't necessarily deliberate in the context of shying away from awkward topics. It just wasn't something we talked about. And I grew up, because of that, not really thinking about the world in the context of our differences. I was accepting of everybody. Silence, to a degree, was healthy to me. Not being conditioned, or so I thought. You know, Deborah rightly said in her talk around unconscious bias, you don't always know what's feeding your mind. But I very much thought at that time that was healthy, and that it didn't matter if you were black or white, straight or gay, male or female. It didn't matter. I wasn't looking at the world through a filter, through that lens. So I walked away from that kind of period of time, and admittedly up to the realization moment here in this room, that although I was a very inclusive person, by default, I had this view that it shouldn't matter. So what happened in this room? So there was a diversity and inclusion presentation for all managers in the lab. Again, this is around about 13 or so years ago. And the 2 presenters who have now left the company spent an hour with us talking about the range of diversity topics that you would expect. And for absolute 100% transparency, I walked towards that door over there in the corner of the room, thinking, oh, not another diversity and inclusion topic, right? And it wasn't because I didn't believe in it. It wasn't because I was non-inclusive and accepting of all. It was that I knew this already. Why do I need to keep being told about this? And I sat in the room and listened, and there was that cognitive moment that happened in my brain of, okay, I'm starting to understand this. And it was the context of the role I had in the company, really, as a manager. And one of the presenters put up a chart of the US being broken down into northeast, northeast, east, southeast, central, etc. And that one of our main development laboratories at the time is in North Carolina. Sorry, the lab is still in North Carolina, hasn't moved, but the rules and the laws at that time were obviously a certain way, and they've improved since that point. But the chart showed kind of 8 core life dimensions, things like healthcare, housing, hate crime, policing in general, etc. And whether or not you had equal rights if you were homosexual. And one of the ones that was, there were 2 actually that stood out that were not equal, and that was hate crime was not recognized at all in North Carolina at that time, nor was hospital visitation rights if you were homosexual. What does that mean to me as a manager sending my employees to Raleigh if they were homosexual and something happened to them? They go out for an evening and they get beaten up and they're hospitalized. And that moment of, but their loved ones couldn't come and visit them. That was a moment for me, one moment. The other one was, again, about the people I work with every day and how they could be leading double lives. Again, this is sexual orientation aligned rather than gender. And how if I go to their desk on a Monday and say, hey, how was your weekend? Every word out of their mouth could be a lie because they don't want to open up. They don't want to be honest and explain about what they've done in their lives, what they've done that weekend, who they went on vacation with, about their partner. There's no photos on their desk for fear of being discriminated against. And it was a human link at that point, because although it shouldn't matter, it really does. Because it matters to people that are subjected to hate crimes and discrimination. It matters to people who live in fear on a daily basis. But first and foremost, and the most important thing is, it means something to people. And it was that moment for me which really set the tone going forward. Agreeing we need equality is not the same as doing something about it. And that was my own. I did have it in quotes. I said to Marion, is it wrong that I quote myself? I thought, yeah, I shouldn't do that. But that was my takeaway. So what do I need to do to keep the conversation going forward? And I left the room, and it was my newfound kind of topic at that time to just have the conversation with everyone who would listen. And one story of the impact of that need to talk is with a friend of mine who I had known at that time for 12 years. A colleague here, become friends. We were having lunch, and we talked about the entire range of the topics I've just expressed to you. And quite rightly, legitimate questions are being asked. Why is it anyone's business about whether or not you're straight or gay in that context of that discussion? And I said, well, don't you think it's really sad that somebody has to be in work and out of work? That they're having to lie and go through those motions every day. And we went for a walk around the site, and for whatever reason, after 12 years, that was the moment he chose to tell me he was one of those people. And it's extraordinary, really, that conversation led to that point, but it reinforced the need to keep talking and move things forward. And subsequently, since then, from the perspective of my role in the company, I try the utmost to be open about how I feel, my thoughts on society at large, what we do in a company. I talk about my family with my team, whether they like it or not. And want everyone to just realize that we're not doing this. These programs, the Be Equal program, is not to be viewed cynically as a corporate direction. It's sponsored by the corporation for sure, but it's there for us because we're people. And that's what I want everyone to kind of go away with, and those who are not in the room very much to somehow get the message that many people believe in equality and agree with it, but that is not the same as doing something about it. So what can you do? And those things that you can do are fairly self-explanatory. Be an upstander. If you do see behaviors that are clearly not appropriate, do something about it. Say something, either directly or to somebody who you feel is potentially more appropriate to do something. Stay curious, as I said previously before. Hugely important just to be aware of what's going on in the world. Be an ally in whatever shape fits you best. Be an ally to any one of the groups that you need to. Be accessible to people. Ask questions. And this came up, the ask questions came up in our breakout session earlier on, where one of the things that I mentioned was there will be many people, and I will very much, pigeonhole this into white males, who may have burning questions, which if you wrote them down on paper would absolutely be politically incorrect. Why do we need more women in the boardroom? Those questions should be allowed to be asked without fear of judgment, so that you seek understanding. And then we can move on to the next question. Volunteer for programs, volunteer for events, activities. That's another thing that obviously we can do together. Keep educating yourself and educate others. Help with recruitment. Recruitment came up earlier today. Help with the onboarding and the hiring of our new blood into the company, be it via the apprenticeship schemes, via graduate recruitment, any work experience students that come through. The experience that they get will shape them going forward. Actively show support for others around you. Mentor, challenge your own thinking, keep talking, make a pledge, be it due to the Be Equal campaign or otherwise. Understand about unconscious bias. It's almost like this was planned. And show up, right? Show up. So previously, I started this with a view on me and my upbringing, and I want to just link it back very quickly, if I can, to my family. And it's weird how this is mountain linked as well. That's very strange. So this was 2 weeks ago in the Swiss mountains, and my youngest daughter Katie on the left, Lauren in the middle, and then that's Jess, my wife, on the right-hand side. Lauren is here actually on work experience for 2 weeks in the design center, which is an amazing milestone for her, and realization that time really is accelerating. And their upbringing is incredibly different, not because of my messaging or what Jess talks about when we're having dinner, but because society is very different. They're very self-aware, they're very aware of what's going on in the world. They get very angry about what's going on in the world. And I love them for that. Whenever we walk into any clothing store and that classic view of, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a superhero, I want to be strong, and then I sparkle over this side, right? They get really annoyed about that. And I love it. I love that they do. So their upbringing is very different, and they will be ultimately far better prepared than I was from a realization standpoint of their own impact in the world going forward. So from an IBM standpoint, I know this is a public campaign too, be aware of our campaign, be aware of what you can do in the context of equality, diversity, inclusion. And remember that agreeing we need equality is not the same as doing something about it. So please, do something about it and think about the message you put out into the world. So, there we go.